Continuing with the calendar, House Bills, third reading, regular, page 49 of the printed calendar. House Bill 773, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to the Government Non-Discrimination Act creation.
The gentleman from Fairfax, Ms. Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
The gentleman has the floor.
Let me first draw your attention to the actual language in the bill, which allows anyone to discriminate against someone who had sexual relations not in a marriage between a man and a woman. Therefore, any premarital sex, any extramarital affairs would be a basis of discrimination. So that when I look at what is allowed in this bill, it would involve scholarships and grants and licensure and accreditation, and all manner of government actions would apply to that provision. I go back to my English major days in Hawthorne when a scarlet A was put on the woman. You have the potential that if you have, in the parlance of my day, a baby out of wedlock, that for the rest of your life, you could be discriminated against because, according to the wording of this bill, you had sexual relationships outside of a marriage between a man and a woman. This overwrite of this bill applies to another element of my background. When I entered campus on the University of Michigan, a large state university, the dean of women in that large state university had a definite network with taxi cab drivers. And she got regular reports if any woman was left off or picked up at an apartment of a male. And parents got letters about what their daughter was doing. There will be more in just a moment. She actually was dismissed during the 4 years that I was on campus. But the reason that she was dismissed actually is right in line with the wonderful remarks we heard this morning on Black History Month. Because she wrote a letter to the parents who happened to be on the board of the Michigan NAACP that their daughter had, in fact, been taken to the apartment of someone of a different race. So that the idea that religious beliefs can interfere with your obligation to carry out the law is something that is tragically part of our history. And with this bill, we're about to write another chapter. I don't have the words before me to again quote in the original ruling in Loving, but it was God's will that there be a separation of the races. And we are about to allow the same in this particular bill, that one interpretation will stand against the law of the land. Let me turn then to the other ramification of this bill. What we have then in newspaper headlines are headlines such as these: Religious Freedom Bill, Religious Freedom Act, equals $60 million of lost revenue for Indiana, appearing in the January 26, 2016. That's the amount of money last year's RFRA debacle cost just the city of Indianapolis. Last March, when it became law, many groups and conventions that planned to hold events in Indianapolis found new locations. It also, in the papers, appeared in March 2015 when the bill was signed in Indiana, that you had strong opposition, fierce opposition by business leaders within the state. to use an owner's faith as a reason to refuse services. The risk of the act range from potential workplace lawsuits on religious grounds to a broader and deeper business chill on the state, with money-making conferences and major corporations threatening to pull out. We have that at stake. But when I mention the workplace, we're also then talking about applying this to the disturbance that someone might take about anything happening in the workplace that might be termed an extramarital affair. Once again, you could not take employment action against such an individual who repeatedly speaks out about how wrong that is. If you did take work action against such an individual for other work purposes, without going through their administrative remedies, they can go directly to court and get full, might as well, because I'm going to get full legal fees in that lawsuit if I prevail. What we are unleashing here is just plain badly written legislation. Unfortunately, though, it also has very deep ramifications. I do take the Jefferson Statute of Religious Freedom extremely seriously. In my case, as I have migrated from serving on the state board of the Methodist Church when I was in youth group, to now being a Unitarian, which is closer to Jefferson's own religious practices. I have always wanted to side on the side of the Quaker concept of religious freedom, that each individual has that freedom. I do not associate myself with the Puritan vision of religious freedom, which would place a scarlet A on someone for society to always punish. Thank you.
The gentleman from Fairfax, Ms. Sickles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to speak to the bill.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You'll have to excuse me for taking this bill a little personally. But when we call a bill the Government Non-Discrimination Act, and then we read it, black is white, up is down, wet is dry. Mr. Speaker, this bill is a discrimination bill. I mean, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And this is a duck. It's not a banana. This is a discriminatory bill that is going to hurt our state. Now, a lot of you probably think this is a free vote because this has no chance, no prayer of becoming law. But your vote will make a difference. You know, your kids will be looking back on what you do today and how you vote on this bill. We've come a long way. I heard it called the religion of secular humanism or something like that. But this year will be the 14th year of the annual Equality Virginia dinner. I think I've been to most of them. Used to be we would have, you know, a few local businesses, maybe a couple law firms, a church or two, sponsor the dinner. First page in the cover, Virginia's largest bank, Capital One. Back page, Altria. Altria today, working together. Altria salutes Equality Virginia. Integrity, trust, and respect define the Altria company's workplaces. It goes on. Genworth, I think they've given a few of you a contribution to be here. Here's a picture, a nice picture of a family with their kid. We came out early in life. We've had a partner-friendly insurance solution since 1999. At Genworth, we believe love is love, and we're here to help protect it. Genworth puts diversity and inclusion at the heart of everything we do. We salute Equality Virginia. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. It goes on and on. Here's a good one. Dominion, the power of diversity. I like the different colored cords that they have coming out of a socket. At Dominion, we know diversity isn't just good, it's also good for business. At Dominion, diversity isn't just something we strive for, it's something we insist on. The bottom line is that diversity is good for business. Having a workforce and a group of suppliers who come from different backgrounds, who have different sets of experience, helps us generate a broader range and better ideas. As a result, our company has strengthened, our communities prosper, and most importantly, our customers benefit. To learn more about Dominion and our dedication to diversity, and it tells you where to go. KPMG, LeClaire Ryan, Merrill Lynch, Hunt & Williams, we're proud to support Equality Village's 12th annual dinner. Bon Secours Hospital, SunTrust Bank, Williams Mullen, Morgan Stanley, a couple of doctors here, Lutheran Family Services. Lutheran Family Services, are you ready to foster care? They want you to be a foster parent. They want someone like me to be a foster parent. There is a lot to know and to think about, and it's important that you work with people who will give you the support and knowledge you need to make the relationship a success. Whether you're an older adult, a younger adult, single or married, opposite or same-sex couple, or working stay-home parent, a homeowner or renter, adoption or foster care may be the right move for you. Call 800-something and we'll talk about it. Lutheran Family Services of Virginia. Richmond Spiders, Mr. Speaker, their alumni group is a supporter. Another law firm, I don't know all these law firms. So, Mr. Speaker, the world has changed. I don't know anything about a secular religion. I think we have to choose whether we want to treat everybody equally or not. It's as simple as that. The law is the same for everybody. So this is the vote that you get to make for the rest of your life right now. Are we going to be fair to everybody in Virginia or not? You know, we're going to pass a budget next week. Hopefully it's going to have a lot of investment, new investment in research, high tech, biosciences, cyber, big data. We could pass this bill and just forget all that. They can go to Boston, they can go to San Diego or San Francisco or Seattle or Madison, Wisconsin to do their business. They don't need to come here where people are second-class citizens and we pass legislation like this. So I guess that's all I can say. Please defeat this measure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this bill and its patron are not concerned with what Genworth Financial does or Dominion or any of the downtown law firms or anybody else that was just cited by the gentleman. That's not what this is about. Those of us who differ with the gentleman on things like traditional marriage and traditional gender identities, you know, we find ourselves constantly under attack by the shifting cultural winds that blow as a headwind against us. You know, we are concerned with this legislation, with what I've said previously on this issue. It is that the activists who pursue same-sex marriage and other issues related to that, they are not satisfied with equality. And they will not be satisfied until people of faith are driven out of this discourse, are made to cower, are made to be in fear of speaking their minds, of living up to their deeply held religious beliefs. They want us driven out. And make no mistake, this is not about private institutions. This is not about what happened in Indiana, which dealt with private institutions, private companies. This is about using the mechanisms of government to accomplish the goal of driving people of faith out of the public square, making them retreat behind the four walls of their place of worship, no longer able to engage in commerce, no longer able to engage in anything that might be deemed discrimination. Mr. Speaker, all we're looking for here is reasonable accommodation of long-held, deeply held religious beliefs. The gentleman talked about, made reference to a school. You know, we have a big school here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, Liberty University. And the students who attend Liberty University get tuition assistance grants. It's not nearly enough to cover their education, but it helps. It's a public policy decision we made long ago to help students attending our private schools. And Liberty University has rules, because it's a Christian institution, about who can live in their student housing, about same-sex marriage, about living together outside of marriage, things that are not new concepts. They are unpopular in popular culture, but they are not new. And one can envision a time in the not-too-distant future where government will be used to punish places like Liberty University by saying, guess what? Unless you subscribe to that church of secular belief that I referred to yesterday on this issue, we're not going to help you anymore. Your tuition assistance grants are no longer available. That is one of potentially thousands of ways that the government could punish someone for not subscribing to this belief system. The gentleman mentioned foster care. You know, Mr. Speaker, we had an issue that I patroned not too long ago that became law, where we protected the deeply held beliefs of charities that provide adoption services, because they provided the bulk of those services. And if we did away with them because they did not subscribe to these beliefs, we would have done a great detriment to children seeking foster care placement and adoption. We know, those of us who believe in this and believe in this bill, know that there will be no stopping the forces that choose to make us cower and go away. And on my watch, Mr. Speaker, I will be proud to say that I fought to keep the government from being used as a vehicle for making that happen. And so I would appreciate very much supporting that age-old principle of religious freedom that we enjoy here in Virginia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking of the bill.
The gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I feel compelled to stand and say something. And let me preface it by saying that I fight for faith. I have deeply held beliefs and religious beliefs, and I appreciate the intent of the gentleman from Shenandoah. I appreciate what he's trying to do. I agree with what he's trying to do. But I do believe that the bill is too broad, and therefore I cannot support it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Prince William, Mr. Marshall.
Speaking to the measure.
The gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, in 2015, when this was a fight in Indiana, which was attempting to pass a statute just like Virginia, and it was curious to me that the governor invited some businesses there to come to a state that had a law that Indiana was thinking of passing. An article appeared in the New York Times, an op-ed by Frank Bruni entitled "Bigotry, the Bible, the Lessons of Indiana." And the gentleman, Mr. Bruni, cited a Michael Gold, says is a prominent gay philanthropist. He told me that church leaders must be made to take homosexuality off the sin list. His commandment is warranted. Now, before I go any further, I want to state I have no ability to make a moral judgment on anybody. I have no window into anyone's soul. but I can look at laws and consequences, and that's as far as my ability to make judgments extends. God knows hearts, I don't. Mr. Speaker, the large success of the LGBT movement in pushing same-sex marriage has come from the identity of these efforts with the civil rights movement. Now, there were stark differences between what happened to African Americans and what happened to persons who have same-sex inclinations. Never were there literacy tests for people with those attractions. There were not separate schools assigned to such individuals, but nevertheless, that is how they've achieved some status. Virginia, as are many as other states, is an employment at will state. You can be hired or fired for any reason. I'm curious how someone is going to be able to identify an individual who's engaged in same-sex behavior walking into a restaurant. For the life of me, I can't figure it out. I don't know how you would, quote, discriminate against such an individual. But I do know that there are efforts to condition participation in what the gentleman has said, the public square, upon acceptance of this agenda pushed by what I think is a minority of those who supported same-sex marriage. What is that about? Well, let's even look at the other direction. LGBT hiring and firing can work in two directions. Apple Computer Company hired a former 10-year Alabama state representative, a Republican named Jay Love, who was chairman of their taxing committee. He was to lobby for them. However, under the rubric of the new tolerance, when Apple found out that Love, in fact, committed the social sin of opposing LGBT marriage, he was fired. Interestingly, Brendan Eich, brilliant gentleman, founder of Mozilla, Firefox internet browser, and inventor of one of these computer languages, JavaScript, committed the sin of donating $1,000 to Proposition 8. For his exercise of his First Amendment rights, he was fired. Nobody ever claimed or could point out that he was in any sense biased against persons with same-sex attraction, but he was nevertheless fired. Science fiction writer, Southern Virginia University professor, Orson Scott Card, a Mormon and past member of the National Organization, was eased out of DC Comics' New Superman project for his opposition to same-sex marriage. Advocates of the new tolerance are definitely targeting Catholic schools. A homosexual teacher at the Catholic Mount St. DeSales Academy in Macon, Georgia, filed a lawsuit against the school, which did not renew his contract as a band teacher after the school discovered his plans to, quote, marry a man, a fact which is not in dispute. Mount St. DeSales, which had posted its hiring policy on the internet, included a willingness to hire individuals who experienced same-sex attraction. However, when he was let go for his actions, not his inclinations, he filed a lawsuit with the Equal Opportunity Commission, which held that indeed the school had discriminated against Mr. Dollar because of his sex. They include sexual stereotyping here. Another effort to purge Catholic schools of their legitimacy is going on right now in Massachusetts at the Fontbonne Academy, an all-girls school in Milton, Massachusetts, run by the Congregation of the Sisters of St. Joseph. A state judge in December decided that the school improperly discriminated against the homosexual man when it rescinded an offer as a food services director after learning that he was, quote, married to a man. Now, in the job application, he agreed to model Catholic teaching in his life. He said he accepted that condition of employment. Well, he had second thoughts. He went back and he sued, and a judge went after the school and said, even though there's supposed to be a religious exemption for such schools, you will have to pay this gentleman. What is disturbing is that the judge knew that he agreed to a model Catholic teaching. Now, let's go to Crystal Dixon, young African-American woman Associate Vice President for Human Resources at the Public University of Toledo. She wrote a letter, an op-ed in the Toledo Free Press, and took issue with the claim that the civil rights struggle could be modeled for, or the basis for homosexual complaints. She said, I differ with that. Well, her exercise of her First Amendment rights proved very costly. She was fired because of the public position she took in her op-ed. Now, other employees criticized her as a bigot in the Toledo paper. They were not disciplined. She was fired. She took her case to the federal courts. Sixth Judicial Circuit, Mr. Speaker, agreed, yes, she should be fired. Mr. Speaker, this should be a two-way street, but it's not. There is an effort to wipe out from the public square any resemblance, any proposition which states that this behavior is problematic or is not beneficial to the common good. The tolerance is not extended to those of us who believe that. This is not live and let live. This is oppress under the name of discrimination. We are headed towards a circumstance in Eastern Europe where in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, you could be a member of one of the professions, law, teaching, whatever, engineering, only if you were a member of the Communist Party. Now, this statute here attempts to prevent the conditioning, in part, of the issuance of a business license, of a professional license, on a subscription to a view that people find to be morally problematic. We've seen it all around the United States. Bakers are being sued successfully because they don't want to be complicit, to be materially participating in actions that they find to be morally repugnant. That isn't good enough. You can't refuse to do this. You must be silenced or you will be sued. Now, that is not live and let live. Mr. Speaker, this body and the other body and this governor, if he really is tolerant, should support the bill from the gentleman from Shenandoah.
The gentleman from Arlington, Mr. Lopez.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
George Washington's letter to the Hebrew congregations of Newport, Rhode Island in 1790 was just 340 well-chosen words, but I think it's telling regarding this legislation. George Washington wrote, "For happily the government of the United States gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, and requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens, in giving it on all occasions their effectual support." This legislation is an affront to Virginia being a welcoming climate, especially for business. This should be an obvious no vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Shall the bill pass?
Mr. Speaker.
The clerk will destroy the roll. The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
I withdraw what was going to be my request, Mr. Speaker, now that everyone's in their seat.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 56, noes 41.
Ayes 56, noes 41. The bill is passed.